with the 2024 presidential election now just 24 days away. The political landscape has taken a dramatic shift in a direction that many pundits didn't foresee. Donald Trump, the former president, has surged ahead, finding himself leading in all 7 key swing states that are set to determine the outcome of this election. The sudden turn in momentum is striking, especially considering that only a month ago, Trump was trailing in nearly all of these battleground states. His resurgence couldn't have come at a better time for his campaign. In fact, the most recent election forecast from Paulie Marcus puts Trump's chances of winning the election at 55, marking his highest odds since early August. This swing in the polls marks a critical moment in what has been an unpredictable election cycle. Today, we're going to dive deep into the newest data, examining how Trump has managed to pull ahead in these vital swing states and what this shift means for the outcome of the election, which is now just around the corner. Beyond simply breaking down the polling numbers, I'm also going to take you through each of these swing states individually. We'll analyze how Trump's polling gains have materialized and whether they could translate into actual electoral wins once ballots are counted. First, let's take a look at the bigger electoral map. I've already marked the states that are considered solid for either the Democrats or Republicans, meaning they're not expected to be competitive and should be safe wins for each party. However, there are a few additional states that, while technically still competitive, are unlikely to tip the scales in the overall election result. These states are important, but they're not the decisive battlegrounds in this election. When it comes down to it, this election will likely hinge on 7 crucial states: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. These states are where the real fight is happening. And while there are 50 states in total, it's these 7 that will ultimately determine who wins the presidency. As of right now, Trump is either leading or in a virtual tie in almost all of these swing states, signaling that he could be in a prime position to pull off a major electoral victory. Let's begin by breaking down each of these states one by one. We'll start with Nevada, move across the Sun Belt, and then turn our focus to the Midwest, where some of the most closely contested races are unfolding. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Starting with Nevada, Trump has now eked out a narrow lead. According to the latest polling, he's up by just 0 point. His rise in the state can be largely attributed to a recent Wall Street Journal poll that showed him leading Kamala Harris, who replaced Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate after his withdrawal by 6. If you look at the trends in Nevada's polling over the last few weeks, Harris had been holding a lead in the state since late August. But as Trump gained momentum, that lead evaporated, and he officially took the top spot just yesterday. While the race in Nevada remains incredibly tight, I believe Trump is on a trajectory to win the state, though likely by a slim margin. In my estimation, he'll secure victory in Nevada by somewhere between 1 and 2 percentage points. To put this into perspective, back in 2020, Joe Biden led Nevada by an average of 5.3 going into Election Day, but he ultimately won the state by just 2.4. This discrepancy between polling and the final result suggests that Trump's support may have been and could still be underestimated in Nevada. In fact, it's not uncommon for polling to miss some of Trump's base, which can result in his performance being stronger than anticipated. This is something we'll need to keep in mind, not just for Nevada, but for other swing states as well. Betting markets reflect the competitive nature of the race in Nevada, with Harris slightly ahead at 51 compared to Trump's 49. However, those numbers essentially represent a statistical tie, and given Trump's current momentum, I believe Nevada will end up leaning in his favor. For now, I'm marking Nevada as tilt red on the electoral map, indicating that while it's still a battleground, Trump is the slight favorite. Winning Nevada would be a big deal for Trump, as Republicans haven't carried the state since 2004, when George W. Bush secured its 6 electoral votes. However, Nevada's relatively small number of electoral votes means that it isn't a make or break state for either candidate. It's important, but it's not the state that will determine the entire election. Still, Trump's lead here is indicative of a broader trend. He's performing well in places where many thought the Democrats had an edge. Next, let's move on to Arizona, a state that has been critical in recent elections and will be just as crucial this time around. Arizona flipped to blue in 2020, with Biden narrowly winning the state by a margin of just 0.31. But now Trump has reclaimed the lead, and he's up by 1 in the polling average. Most of the recent polls show Trump with a steady lead, and it appears that Harris hasn't been able to make significant inroads here since taking over from Biden. In fact, Trump has maintained a lead of about 1 to 2 points for some time now. If these trends hold, Trump should have enough of a margin to win Arizona, especially when you consider what happened in the last election. In 2020, Biden was projected to win Arizona by about 2.6, but he only ended up winning by 0.31. This suggests that the polls were overestimating Biden's support, and the same thing could be happening in this election cycle. The betting markets are similarly optimistic about Trump's chances in Arizona throughout the entire election cycle. Whether Trump was running against Biden or Harris, the odds have favored him in this state. Harris did experience a brief surge after the Democratic convention, but since then, Trump has steadily widened his lead. One thing to note is that Harris hasn't outperformed Biden in Arizona, which may call into question whether the Democrats' decision to replace him was the right one. If Trump wins Arizona, it will likely be seen as a sign that Democrats mishandled the candidate transition. On my electoral map, Arizona is lean red, meaning I believe Trump will win by just over 2 hours. If that happens, it will represent a key flip for Trump and give him a significant boost in his electoral count. Now let's turn our attention to Georgia. Trump is currently leading by 0.5 in the polling average, and the state is looking increasingly solid for him. Out of the 9 most recent polls conducted in Georgia, Trump is ahead in 7, while 2 show the race as a tie. Georgia is another state where Trump has been steadily building his lead, and it seems unlikely that Harris will be able to reverse the trend. Harris did have a brief period where she was leading in early September, but Trump quickly regained the advantage, and he has maintained it ever since. Georgia is still a competitive state, but it has historically leaned Republican, and that's likely to be the case again this year in 2022. For example, Republican Governor Brian Kemp won re-election by a comfortable margin, demonstrating that the state's Republican base is still strong. While the presidential race will be closer, I expect Trump to win Georgia by about 2, and similar to his margin of victory in 2016 when he carried the state by 5 points. Polling in Georgia during the 2020 election was relatively accurate. Biden led by an average of 1.2 in the final days leading up to the election, and he ended up winning the state by just 0.24. Given that polling accuracy, if Trump's current lead holds, he should be on track to win the state. Betting markets also reflect this trend, with Trump now having a 64% chance of winning Georgia, a significant advantage. On my map, Georgia is lean red, making it another key state that Trump is likely to flip in his favor. Next up is North Carolina, a state that has consistently leaned toward Trump throughout this election cycle. Trump won North Carolina in both 2016 and 2020, and he's expected to win it again in 2024. Currently, Trump holds a 0.5 lead in the polling average, with 7 out of 8 recent polls showing him ahead and 1 showing a tie. Trump has held a steady lead in North Carolina for most of the year. And while his lead did shrink at one point, he's since widened the gap. In 2020, the polls showed Biden leading in North Carolina by an average of 1.8, but Trump ended up winning the state by 1.3. This suggests that the polling may once again be underestimating Trump's support here. The betting markets agree that Trump is favored to win North Carolina, giving him a 63% chance of victory. However, there's one potential wild card in this the controversies surrounding Mark Robinson, the Republican candidate for governor. Robinson's campaign has been embroiled in scandals, and it's possible that this could hurt Republicans down ballot. Still, I don't think Robinson's troubles will have much of an impact on Trump's chances in the presidential race. I expect Trump to win North Carolina by around 2, which would be a slight improvement over his 2020 margin. On the electoral map, North Carolina will remain lean red, adding another state to Trump's column. With those 4 states now leaning toward Trump, his electoral count rises to 268, just 2 votes shy of the 270 needed to win the presidency. This means that the election could come down to just 1 or 2 of the remaining swing states. Now let's focus on Pennsylvania, a state that has 20 electoral votes and could very well be the deciding factor in this election. Currently, Trump leads Harris by 1.5 in Pennsylvania, a significant swing in his favor over the past few weeks. Pennsylvania is historically one of the most hotly contested states in presidential elections. In 2020, Biden won the state by a narrow margin of 1.2 but Trump has been outperforming Harris in almost every poll. If you look at the latest polling averages, Trump is up by 1.5, and the betting markets give him a 58% chance of winning the state. Given that Trump is outperforming where he was in 2020, and considering that Biden's polling lead was wider than Harris's, I believe Pennsylvania is now leaning in Trump's direction. I'm marking his lean red on the map, which would push Trump over the 270 vote threshold, officially making him the front runner in this election. Let's also talk about Michigan, where Trump has similarly gained momentum. In the past few weeks, Michigan has gone from being a solid state for Harris to a toss-up. Recent polling shows that Harris's lead has all but disappeared, and Trump has pulled into a virtual tie. The betting markets have taken notice. Harris's odds of winning Michigan have dropped from 68 to just 49th, while Trump is now favored to win. If these trends continue, Trump could flip Michigan, another crucial battleground state, in his favor. I'm marking Michigan as tilt red on the map. Lastly, let's focus on Wisconsin, the final swing state in this election. Kamala Harris is still ahead in Wisconsin, but just barely. She leads by only 0.3, according to the latest polling data. Wisconsin has been one of the most unpredictable swing states in recent elections. Back in 2020, Biden was expected to win Wisconsin by 8.4, but he ended up winning by less than 1. Given how polling has missed the mark in this state, combined with the trends we're seeing in neighboring Michigan and Pennsylvania, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump overtakes Harris in the coming days. If Trump manages to win Wisconsin, it will add to his growing electoral count and further cement his position as the frontrunner. I'm marking Wisconsin as tilt red for now, indicating that while Harris is still slightly ahead, Trump could easily take the lead before Election Day. In conclusion, based on the current polling and historical trends, Trump is on track to win 6 of the 7 key swing states, which would give him a decisive electoral victory. Factoring in the past polling errors we've seen, it's not out of the question that Trump could sweep all 7 swing states, which would give him over 300 electoral votes. If that happens, it would mark a dramatic turnaround for the former president, who just a few months ago was trailing in many of these states. Now, Trump has positioned himself as the clear frontrunner heading into the final stretch of the campaign, and all eyes are on these swing states to see if he can maintain his momentum through Election Day. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates as we continue to track this historic election.